Hey, this is author A.L.McCarroll coming at you from my desk in my room. I'm honestly a little tiny bit nervous to be speaking to everyone in the world, pretty much. I have my own issues with social anxiety, and this is a way for me to work on that. All right, well, this is week 2 of me reading you chapter by chapter of the first book of the Into the Void trilogy, The Pawn. Before I get started reading the next chapter, I just want to kind of give y'all an update on how things are going. I'm working hard on book 3, and in my spare time, I'm taking care of my son, and I'm watching a cute little anime, Rental Girlfriend, or a Rent-A-Girlfriend is actually what it's called. It's really cute. I'm just binging that, and let's see, listening to really cool audiobooks like the newest Dungeon Crawler Carl. That's been really fun to listen to. I like binged that. I got through it really fast, and just trying to live life and be as happy as I possibly can. I hope everybody's doing well, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming chapter. Alright guys, let's get started. Chapter 2. A man's voice rang out in the dark room. Miss Matthews. Guinevere turned her head over her shoulder to see who had spoken. The room was dark, except for a dim lamp on her workbench. Tiny lights in various colors shined solid or flicked on and off. They came from the machinery along the walls leading to the open door. She saw a dark figure standing with one hand holding the door open. Guinevere stood up from the chair. It's surprising to find a worker still here at this hour. As she spoke, greeting the figure, she watched as Dr. Silver walked further into the room. The lights were playing off of the white of his lab coat. I like to stay late. It's the only time I can get things done without people getting in my way. She could see an outline of his facial features in the low flickering light. He had a strong jawline that was emphasized by the multicolored lights. Guinevere took a moment to think over his words. When her career started, she felt like she thrived in smaller labs with a limited number of helpers and distractions. Now, her best work was done in the late hours of the night, between her times of rest, typically which had, until recently, yielded ideas to solve problems. Guinevere caught Dr. Silver's eyes looking her over, and she could see a hint of concern behind the look. Then finally, she spoke in a tone that was all business. I can understand that, Dr. Silver. What brings you here? He looked down and away from her gaze before speaking again. I heard you yell. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. You're usually quiet. I sometimes hear you when you're working at night, and if you're resting, it's typically quiet. Dr. Silver met her eyes, and she could hear the admiration in his voice as he continued. You work so tirelessly, Miss Matthews. It's always been very inspiring to see. But I wonder, don't you ever get tired? Guinevere couldn't help but smile a tiny bit at the younger man. Then before she could stop herself, she spoke in an uncharacteristically friendly manner. Well, that's my secret. I'm always tired. Her mind raced as she realized what she had just done. It had felt easy, but she knew the conversation needed to return to business as usual. I'm okay, though. I just hit a snag in my plans, but I'm sure I'll figure out a resolution soon. I don't want to keep you from your work. Guinevere could see that Dr. Silver's face held a warm smile that took her aback. We could talk about the problem you're having. I'm not too bad a company to keep, Miss Matthews. He said her name slowly, as if the words were made of silk. Dr. Silver, do not mistake my kindness for interest. She shot back at him, feeling surprisingly flustered. He smirked at her and gave a little shrug. Sorry about that, ma'am. She nodded sternly in response as he continued. I'll just get you a cup of coffee. Then we could talk like colleagues." Guinevere watched Dr. Silver turn and casually walk out of the room. "What's wrong with me?" she thought in a rush. He must be only about 20 years old. It was ridiculous for him to be interested in a woman like herself, who was in her mid-30s. She caught a reflection of herself in a piece of metal on her work table. Her hair was messy as usual, but suddenly she felt the need to run her fingers through it to straighten it up. "Here you are, chatting him up like you're someone his age," Guinevere continued to berate herself. "You're also his superior, making this kind of interaction doubly inappropriate." Guinevere took a few deep breaths to steady herself. She needed to get into that bunker. She wanted the dreams to be resolved. But worst of all, she realized that she might actually need Dr. Silver's help. "Why not let him in on her problem?" she thought to herself. "If he's genuinely infatuated with you, it might be an advantage that could help keep him quiet about any potential illegal plans you're going to have about getting into this bunker." Guinevere had dealt with the feelings of others directed her way. So far, she had been able to navigate around the problems they caused without receiving much backlash. She had concluded that she would need to break into the museum. If Dr. Silver was willing to help and stay quiet, he could be a beneficial aid. With that in mind, Guinevere felt more accepting and ready for her next interaction with Dr. Silver. Marcus drank in the sight of Guinevere, smelling the steam from the coffee he had prepared for her. Guinevere Matthews was his idol. She had sparked the ambition within a kid from the harsh desert of planet Darlene. Marcus had built himself up from what little he was provided by his poor upbringing in the city of Calera. Guinevere sat in front of her workbench and waved her hand towards an empty chair across from hers. "Here, have a seat, Dr. Silver. We have a bit to discuss, mainly if I will use your help with the roadblock in my project." She wanted him to take a seat, noticing that he had lost the flirtatious spark from before. Dr. Silver had brought back 2 mugs of coffee, handing her one before he took a seat across from hers. Maybe she could actually work with him without any more disturbances. "So, what about this project, Miss Matthews?" Marcus tried his best to keep his appearance professional, but inside his heart raced. "I recently made a discovery in the Old World Museum," she stated plainly. He looked at her questioningly before replying. "Many discoveries are made in museums. Are you talking about something new?" "Yes!" Guinevere popped the word out excitedly, the pupils in her brown eyes slightly dilating. "So adorable," he thought quickly, before she continued in a rush. "A little over a week ago, I went to the Old World Museum and used my GCOM to check for low-grade signal waves. I found one similar to a basic digital door panel, but this signal came from behind a wall." Guinevere rolled her eyes as she continued quickly. "Next thing you know, this pushy altered guard was kicking me out for cutting open the wall. He made jokes about my communication skills not being good because of my oversight of not previously informing the owner of what I intended to do." Guinevere watched Dr. Silver's composure break, and he dissolved into laughter. "Why are you laughing?" she grouched. He composed himself before he spoke next. "Let me get this straight. You walk into a museum, just cut open an ancient wall, expecting to be allowed to do this. Why? Because you're the great Dr. Guinevere Matthews, child prodigy scientist who went planet to planet setting up universal transmitters that make these little fun boxes work?" Dr. Silver lifted his arm to show his calm before continuing. "Sorry, sweetie, that ain't how the worlds work." Guinevere glowered at him, thinking over what he said before replying. "My work is the most important thing to me, and it usually results in significant benefits for others. It's not my fault they don't see that." Dr. Silver snorted a quick laugh through his nose, his blue eyes looking at her excitedly. "So you're an any means necessary kind of girl. I like that about you, Gwen." She felt herself flush at him calling her Gwen. It had been so long since someone besides Daisy had been so informal with her. "It's Miss Matthews. You better remember that. We won't be working together." Marcus enjoyed getting a rise out of her. He even thought he saw her blush. But he wanted these moments with her, so he quickly apologized and changed the subject. "And altered, as a guard. About time." It seemed like the change of topic had cooled her down. Yes, it was strange to see one on Gaia, since they usually stay on Planet Prime, or more mixed planets like Darlene. "So how do you feel about them, Miss Matthews?" She shrugged before speaking again. "I don't mind the altered. They do stand out. It could be very beneficial if changing something could help you with tasks instead of just the standard hereditary body color changes. When you make any changes, it's forever. That made me shy away from body modification upgrades or whole body color changes." Dr. Silver quietly nodded as she spoke, and then he asked her a question that caught her off guard. "Why don't you like using your doctor title?" Guinevere took a sip of her coffee and thought to herself. He probably expected a deeply profound answer, but this one was straightforward. "I always thought it made me sound old." She looked at him before continuing, expecting him to laugh or smirk. "I could use it now that I'm older, but I've just gotten set in my ways." Their eyes met, and the silence grew between them. Dr. Silver's eyes reminded her of the deep dark waters on planet Titania. He spoke the following words slowly. "I think you're beautiful." Guinevere felt her heart flutter, and he continued before she could tell him off. "I'm thankful you're giving me a chance to help you, and I promise I'll be professional with you. I just thought you needed to know." They let the moment pass and continued on topic, with him finally asking her the question she least wanted to answer. Dr. Silver was smart enough to work for Gwyntek, so she knew it would be a matter of time until it came up. "So, the signal you found, how did you realize you should look for something like that?" He eyed her curiously. Damn, Guinevere thought to herself, and considered lying to him, but thought better of it. Taking a deep breath, she began to explain. "Weirdly enough, I had a dream about it, and I just couldn't shake it from my mind, so I went to investigate it." He quietly listened to her, and she appreciated him not interrupting. "The door was actually there, just between that wall. Now my mind is constantly filled with the thought of what could be inside. I can't even sleep without dreaming about it. I need to resolve this fast so I can get back to more significant projects without this big mental distraction." "I don't think that's too weird, Miss Matthews. People project thoughts into dreams. As I'm sure you know, you probably already had a hunch. Now that you're unfulfilled, it's gotten a hold on you." Guinevere watched as he stood from his seat with a gleam of determination on his features. She found him easy to read in just this tiny amount of time they spent together. "I might be able to help you more than you know." It was her turn to look at him curiously. "How is that, then?" Marcus wondered if it was a mistake to show her the little projects he had been working on under the table, using all the tools Gwyntek had to provide. Of course, each device was highly illegal and could get him into a lot of trouble, but a scientist was nothing if they didn't push every boundary, and he had seen it in her. He knew she felt the same way. Marcus brought her to his office, unlocking the door to his work area with mounting excitement. He had the childish hope that what he showed her would impress her, but he pushed those thoughts back. He needed to play things cool with her, move at her pace. It still just felt like a dream to work for Gwyntek and be able to be around Guinevere. She watched him open a wall panel and produce two small electronic devices. She had never thought that things could be hidden in the space between wall panels. It was creatively sly of him. He laid both devices down on his black metal desk. Guinevere thought he was only a medical doctor. His team worked in the pharmaceutical department. To get the parts to make these things, Dr. Silver must have broken into another lab within the building and taken what he needed. That alone would be grounds for termination, if not detainment. But she still wanted to know what the devices were. "I'm sure you have a lot of questions for me." She did, but she decided to ask the most important one first. "How will these help me get into that door?" Marcus hadn't expected for her to be so direct. She knew what she wanted. He liked seeing that side of his muse. He smiled as he picked up the first device in the lineup. This is a camera feed scrambler. I made it first, and once I did, I could come and go through this building to get the materials I needed for the next one. She reached out and took the device, carefully inspecting it. Dr. Silver had done a very professional job on it, she thought as she flipped it over in her hands. The next device unlocks even the most complex of locks fast when using a GCOM. I really got into many restricted places with this. Marcus smiled as she took the strand, plug, and cable device from him. Dr. Silver showed her how it could be attached to one of the ports on her comm, and the other end could be used to connect it to the electronics in a door panel. It allows any comm to bypass the codes built into most locks. Guinevere excitedly thought of how this hacking cord could work on the door to the museum and potentially the door from her dream. She began to feel hopeful. Dr. Silver took the device back from her. She was impressed, to say the least, but she wouldn't let it show. She didn't want him to read too much into it. So what do you think? She could hear a tiny bit of worry in his tone. With devices like these, you would undoubtedly make an excellent thief. Guinevere kept her face blank of emotion as she spoke. You proved how good of a thief you are by stealing all the materials needed to do these hidden projects. Guinevere watched as the worry spread into his face and smiled as she finished. Good thing that's what I need. With this level of talent for electronic work, I'm surprised you haven't been working in my branch of the laboratories, Dr. Silver. If you help me tonight, I might be able to get you transferred. Marcus had been scared at first, and now he wondered if Guinevere had planned to keep him in suspense and fear before she dropped the good news. He swelled with pride at the smile and compliments she had given him. The fact that Guinevere thought he was skilled enough to work in her department had him over the moons. Marcus had assumed that after this project was over, he would return to working away from Guinevere, but now he had something to strive for. He would give this his all. Let's do it tonight. How casual Dr. Silver was with this statement took her off guard. Guinevere quickly nodded as she thought it over. With the devices he made, she couldn't see why they shouldn't. It would only solve her problem sooner than anticipated. Okay, but how are we going to get there? The museum is a few miles from here. All transportation shuttles record the occupant's start and destination. Dr. Silver smiled, excitement sparkling in his eyes. That's a piece of cake. I can hack into where you scan for payment and change the route information. It will just look like we took a drive to a diner. Guinevere absentmindedly tapped her fingertips on her freckled bottom lip before her next question. How will it look when they can't see us in the cameras at the diner you've decided we'd be at? Guinevere was sure she had poked a big hole in his plan and waited for Dr. Silver to show some deflation. That's just it. Diners in low-income areas usually don't have enough money to spring on cameras, and I already know the perfect place. Guinevere felt excitement take off in her chest. This plan would actually have a chance of working. So what do you say, Miss Matthews? Dr. Silver threw his thumb over his shoulder towards the door. Want to go grab a bite to eat? He smiled wickedly, letting her know that he felt at home with acts of mischief. Okay, Guinevere smiled up at him from where she sat. Let's do it. Hey, this is A.L.McCarroll. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Remember to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, also turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. Don't forget to follow me on my social media platforms for updates. You can find the links in the description box. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned and take care.